It's the boy Blackbeard Mirage. I'm back. The occultist. We're about to go into some higher Islamic sciences, dealing with some Autochthonous American sciences. All right. So right now we're about to deal with some American sciences. Basically go into some of the, information that was left by our ancestors that were Aboriginal American. And this information is ours by birthright and bloodline. Okay. So although a lot of you all may get a lot of this information in books and Google, etc., you have to remember that the authors of this stuff are actually related to you by blood. Do we know exactly who our direct ancestors are? No, we don't. It would be very, very nice if we did. But you got to remember that people went, very, very great lengths to make sure you didn't know that. So we don't have to really look too deeper. All we need to really do is kind of talk to some more recent ancestors and see what they can tell us about, what they know. And if you don't hear anything about Africa, that means you need to go and look right towards the Americas, because, you can start seeing pictures and books, etc. And it's going to give you basically a lot of evidence that that there were copper colored melanated people here on this, continent that look just like you. So there's no point of really looking across the waters if it's already a group that was here known by history, and by archaeology. So it's best to look into those people. But nevertheless, we're about to go into some of the sciences they left behind and some of the symbols they left behind. First thing you got to remember is that our ancestors here in America, were glyphed, and their symbol was the serpent. All right. So what we're going to deal with right now is the Amaru Aboriginal serpents, which really is who we are. You know what I'm saying? The Serpentine people. So if you hear the word Moors, Autochthons, or Aboriginals, these are Serpentine people. And you'll see why I say Serpentine in a minute. But just a few years ago, you had the guy David Icke. It's a guy from South Africa named Credo Mutwa, and a few other people. But a lot of us know these stories about, the so-called reptilian race, and, them intermingling with, so-called black people, or just the original people on the planet. And we hear this story about these reptilians giving people, knowledge and information, etc. Now, as far as, a physical reptilian humanoid type of man, if that's what you subscribe to, that's what you subscribe to. I'm not here to tell you what you should believe or what you shouldn't believe. But to my understanding, a lot of this is very, very esoteric and occult. If you think that it was a serpent man giving people apples and stuff like that, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm not here to argue with that, but I'm dealing more with the occult symbolism right now, because see, the symbolism can be proven. We can't necessarily prove if it was a reptilian man, although I'm not saying it's not, because I do know that there are other worldly beings and other extraterrestrial forces that are real. Humans aren't the only thing. Now, do I think that they are in the third density like we are? I don't. I think a lot of these beings may be fourth dimensional and fifth dimensional and higher, and then they may be etheric in nature. Can some of them materialize into a three-dimensional, carbon state? I'm pretty sure they can. But, if I don't know if they do that all the time, because I've never really seen a reptilian human. So, we don't want to confuse, the propaganda that's put out here versus what our ancestors put out here. Because, see, I'm dealing with my ancestors and what they said. Yes, they did make stories that involved talking serpents, but they also gave me a supplementary book and supplementary stories to actually explain the symbol of the exoterics talking serpent. So my ancestors actually told me that they weren't talking about a literal serpent. Okay. And if you don't know anything about, the esoteric tree of life, or the esoteric tree of knowledge of good and evil, then you wouldn't know that that's what they really were talking about. You wouldn't know that the serpent represents knowledge and it represents, kundalini energy, etc. You wouldn't really know that if you didn't go no deeper. So you got the one people who are exoteric, and they think that the reptilian is a, humanoid lizard type of man that was talking and basically, fucking over humans. And once again, I don't know if that was real or not. I don't know. But on one end, you got people that think that. And then on the other end, you have people that, maybe a little more like me, that deal with more of the occult symbolism and the esoteric symbolism of it. All right. How it pertains to the human body and biology, how it pertains to the human mind and psychology. That's more so what I deal with. So you have the Serpentine or the reptilian literature that go on both of those polarities, but it's more so, which one is more objective and empirical, and which one is a little more maybe fantasy and allegorical and people are making it real. You see. So you're going to hear me in 2018 now always referring to Aboriginals as serpentine people because, see, I refer to myself as this. So this is something we just got to get a little familiar with, all right? Now, although I'm saying serpentine and reptilian, you got to think that reptiles, or serpents, that includes snakes, lizards, and also includes alligators and crocodiles. Now, here in the lands of Amaru, when the Union Christian states of the bleached out, blonde-haired sons of Yaqub, one thing that they did when they were coming deeper into the Everglades, coming deeper into Georgia, coming deeper into the South, is they had a little ritual to where they would take a lot of the Aboriginal or the Moorish babies and they would put them in the waters and use them to basically attract the alligators, okay? Because in the Americas, the ancient symbol is the alligator, all right? So when you deal with the Egyptian mythos, although a lot of you all know about Sebek, okay? And Sebek is one of the reptilian or one of the so-called crocodile gods in Egypt. But you got to remember now that there also is an Egypt right here in America. All right. There is an Egypt that is being, guarded very, very heavily in the western states of America, Arizona, Utah, etc. That whole region, Khalifa, etc. All right. So is Sebek necessarily a crocodile god, or could Sebek also be an alligator god? Because my younger brother, one time when me and him was talking, and he does a lot of, research on his own, but he was telling me that he can remember coming across the information to where a lot of these so-called slave catchers, when they were running to try to, capture our people, that a lot of them would have these dogs with them. And these dogs basically were being attacked and consumed by a lot of these alligators in the Everglades and just different creeks and waters that are all over the South. And these alligators had, started to become addicted to that damn dog flesh. So a lot of these Caucasian so-called slave catchers was getting eaten up alive by alligators by default because they with the dog. And then also this is more fresh meat for the alligator to eat up. And also, too, a lot of these alligators weren't necessarily probably eating the Aboriginals that were running and trying to get to the freedom. All right. So that's another part of the history of that. The Aboriginal American and the alligator are very, very closely associated. All right. Now you got to also think about this, too, now. If Aboriginal people are people from the planet, and all the animals, all the mammals, all the reptilians, all the birds, etc., and they also are a species of the planet too, we don't have to be like connected by intermingling with them to be one with those animals. You see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, when I leave my house, when I see grass, when I see trees, when I see animals, and then when I see other Aboriginal people, see, I feel like these are all people that are from this planet. You see, I don't feel disconnected from any of that. So when I see animals, I'm connected to these animals now. I'm connected to these alligators. So I don't have to sleep with an alligator, or a reptilian don't have to fuck a human and then produce this reptilian humanoid in order for me to be connected to a lot of this stuff. You see, it's different. So me giving you that story and that example of these so-called slave captured, Caucasians, being eaten and consumed and being attacked by these alligators in the Everglades when they were coming into the South, dealing with these issues and conflicts with the Aborigines of so-called Georgia and Florida, what they call the Yamasee Wars and what they call in the so-called Seminole Wars and what they call the American Revolution, what they call all the wars with General Custer and people like Andrew Jackson, etc. A lot of these people were being attacked by alligators. So this is why you're going to always see the Aboriginal woman in a lot of paintings. She is sitting on top of an alligator because that alligator represents the chaos sphere, or represents the Ain Sof. So we still dealing with the Ain Sof in this tape. Okay. The Ain Sof represents basically the nothingness, or the black uncreated. It represents this black void you see that's around the candle in front of you. That is the Ain Sof. So when you see the glyph of the serpent or the alligator, that represents the chaos energy or the primal energy of creation. The uncreated energy. That's what it is. And it's chaos. It's chaotic. Just like you see an alligator, it's a very, very chaotic animal. You see, it's a very, very chaotic animal, and it always roams in the waters. And think about like anacondas, rock pythons, and other large, snakes. They're more water. You know what I'm saying? With their work, if they get you in the water, it's a wrap. That water represents the waters of noon, or the dark waters of the Ain Sof. Okay. That's why in Genesis it says that in the beginning God created, the light and separated the light from the darkness, etc. Like, but this darkness was a dark water. It was a live dark water, also known as the Akash. If you've ever seen the movie The Mummy, there was a scene where they were doing a ritual, and there were these dark waters, and these dark waters were alive, and it was these beings and these certain entities, these telepathic entities coming out of the water. So that represents the Ain Sof, and this is what I'm talking about here. And this is all connected to Americans or so-called black people. So I'm giving you, and we're going into old American occult symbolism, and dealing with the serpent, and these alligators eating up these Moorish babies is a symbol of Saturn or the Ain Sof eating his own children. Okay, so you also hear the story in mythology where they say Saturn eats his own children, and that is also the alligator eating these Moorish babies. Now, although these Moorish babies this wasn't something good, because they dealt with pain. People had to have their kids kidnapped and eaten, and it wasn't a good situation on a physical level. But we're talking about on a more occult level right now, in the symbolism, just the symbolism. Also, another thing here, a lot of our Aboriginal ancestors that they call Indians, they had a lot of serpent mounds, especially up in the Midwest. They had a lot of serpent mounds. You had a lot of mounds and a lot of different streets, or what we call streets today, and a lot of communities that were actually in the shape of a serpent, if you could see it from an aerial view. And once again, this is still continuing that serpentine ancient symbolism that's from here in America. So also, if you even look up the word America, it means land of the plumed serpent, believe it or not. And the Christ heroes of America in ancient literature are Quetzalcoatl, which is the plumed feather serpent that you all know of from Central America. And it is also Heru, that you all know of from the so-called Egyptian mystery system. All right. These are actually the two Christ figures of America. So you see how you have, these Caucasians, and they deal with their white Jesus. But Moors are Aboriginals. Some of our symbolism as far as the Christ or the hero is dealing with Quetzalcoatl and Heru. All right. So, and as Quetzalcoatl is actually a serpent. And actually, he's a serpent where when he opens his mouth, sometimes an ancestor will come through his mouth and give certain wisdom and certain communication to whoever, the person that's still on the physical plane that is communicating with. You have that mystery system in Mexico. And then you also have the mystery system of Heru. And he deals with the serpentine energy all the time with his battles with Set and with Set and Apep, rather. So that's just that same darkness versus the light. So that same way you have that light in front of you. Every night, Heru has to fight Set or Apophis or Apep in order to make sure that, that the sun can rise another day. So Heru is also, glyphed with Mars and Scorpio. And Scorpio is once again that serpentine or that reptilian energy. So Heru is also a falcon, and a hawk, but he's also a serpent, okay, or a scorpion. All right. So we're going to read right now into a book called Outside the Circles of Time by Kenneth Grant. And we're going to kind of go deeper into this serpentine wisdom, because although I just gave you all a lot of esoteric symbols, the serpent basically is just a symbol for the kundalini energy, or what we call the life force energy inside of man and woman. It is basically an energy, and you have even certain nerves in your body where this energy works through. If you get into the yoga system, it's called the Ida and the Pingala glands, all right, also known as Adam and Eve. And this is where the serpentine energy kind of flows through. If you've ever meditated before and got deep into meditation, and if you've ever did any kind of yoga exercises, or basically if you've had any what we call kundalini experiences, to where you feel this, it's like this crystalline, cold, icy hot type of feeling that actually is, going to move in a like serpentine like way from the base of your spine all the way to about to your last vertebrae on your neck, right before you get to the medulla oblongata. And then right when it gets to this region, that serpentine energy is going to kind of spread out like a shotgun. So how when you shoot a shotgun and it has those pellets, and those pellets spread out, and that's how it hits its target. That's kind of how the kundalini energy works. It rises from the base of your spine, but by the time it gets to your shoulders, it's going to kind of spread out, and you're going to feel it too, because it's going to feel like these crystals or it's going to feel like, remember when you would get a brand new pair of shoes and they'll have those little packs in it and they'll have those little crystal balls. It's going to feel like a bunch of those are just moving around in your shoulders or in your back rather. So this is the Kundalini experience, and it's some real stuff. And if you're getting deeper into the occult, you'll start to have this. But this is something on more of the adept level. So somebody who is just listening to tapes and think that this is something that just sounds cool, you'll never be allowed to experience this by your own higher self. You have to actually let go all ego to raise your Kundalini. So a lot of you all have had these experiences and didn't even know it. But I just had to speak on the people of ego because we don't want to get them confused. So in this book, Outside the Circle of Time, we're going to talk about how the Kundalini energy is actually raised via sex. Because a lot of people want to know, well, how can you raise your Kundalini and how can I get this serpentine energy inside of me to awaken? You get it from basically anything dealing with the higher self. That could be, just trying to do some forms of studying, etc. But the number one prime way that a lot of your ancestors did it and what they wanted us to know about it is that you raise the Kundalini energy through sex. So the number one way to raise Kundalini energy is through sexual intercourse, believe it or not. All right. So we're going to read into this book, and we're going to deal with some Aleister Crowley information because he dealt with a lot of Typhonian information. It's the same American serpentine wisdom. And he created what's known as love is the law, love under will. So we're going to just go deeper into the occult of what that means and how it ties to the sexual act and it raising the Kundalini energy. Okay. Love is here identified with the method of effecting magical translation and transformation. For love, in the sense in which the word is used in the book of the law, has an essentially biochemical and sexual connotation. I'm going to reread that whole sentence. I apologize for this. Love is here identified with the method of effecting magical translation and transformation. For love, in the sense in which the word is used in the book of the law, has an essentially biochemical and sexual connotation. So right now, when you deal with the occult or the esoteric literatures, and they talking about love, what they're talking about is a biochemical and sexual connotation. Now, did I just go into how the Kundalini energy works through certain glands in your body and how this is attached to your biology? And didn't I just tell you that it's raised through sexual intercourse? We're going deeper. Night Side of Eden contains a scheme of magical formulas and the modes of sexual sorcery which they imply. It is tolerably certain that Crowley himself did not fully recognize these implications. This may be explained by the fact that not until the year of his death, 1947, did any massive contact occur between Earth and the extraterrestrial intelligences, a contact which his intercourse with Awas had helped to make possible. Now, right here, Aleister Crowley was doing a lot of sexual rituals, and then eventually he came into, what we call a praetor intelligence, or what we call a higher demon, or what we call the higher self, or what we call an angelic extraterrestrial force, or what we call an ancestral being known as Awas. Let's go deeper. Let me get to my page. I apologize for this real quick. Now we're going to go deeper into this mystery. Recent research suggests that dream control may be an alternative designation for Meon control. Example, the control of Universe B, represented in ancient Egyptian mythology as Amenta, and in modern psychology as the magically controlled subconscious. Let me repeat this. Recent research suggests that dream control may be an alternative designation for Meon control. Example, the control of Universe B, represented in ancient Egyptian mythology as Amenta, and in modern psychology as the magically controlled subconsciousness. So let's go in deeper into this then. So a lot of these tapes, you hear me talk about the subconscious mind. You hear me talk about connecting and communicating with the higher self, the Ain Sof. You hear me talk about Satanism. You hear me talking about the darkness. You hear me talking about the boogeyman, the horror stories. You see some of my thumbnails, and I use what you all may call satanic symbolism. All these things are basically tools to communicate with the subconscious mind. So you know how you would have let's say a pair of pliers, okay, or any kind of tool. Let's say you have a hammer, and you use the hammer to bang the nail to get the nail to go inside of the wood. So the hammer is communicating with the nail to get it to act and behave and do a certain things, to complete a certain task for you. So all these subconscious dark symbols that we call the boogeyman, the devil, and all this stuff I'm talking about, these are basically hammers to knock in and awaken the subconscious mind and to control the subconscious mind magically, okay? And this is all known as Universe B, and in the literature and the occult stories, it's known as hell. So anytime you've ever seen a horror movie, anytime you've ever seen or read a mythology and they talked about this dark and ugly place, or any kind of, media you've seen where it's this ugly, dark world, all this spooky stuff, vampires, werewolves, and all this kind of stuff, this is actually known as Universe B, or the subconscious mind. That is what that is, okay? So you have the day side of things, and then you have the night side of things. Remember how I said that Heru always battles the serpent in order to make sure that the sun will rise yet another day? Because Heru represents the one that can magically control the subconscious mind. It is the light within the darkness. So just like you all see this candle in front of you and you see the Ain Sof, or the darkness around the candle, this represents Heru within the darkness. That having reasoning and having your lights on within the darkness. So that's why candles actually are subconscious symbols, because usually you only light a candle when it's dark. Have you ever thought about that? Sometimes you can light them during the day. We have people that do that if you have a candle and it is emitting a certain fragrance. But most people probably light candles in the darkness, okay? So the candle represents Heru. It represents the consciousness, and it represents being awake within the darkness. Because I just read a minute ago that about dream control, okay? So a lot of our ancestors, when you read this stuff about the occult, the serpent, all this shit you are reading, these mythologies, really this is just our ancestors trying to explain to us, look, we can control our dreams. And what you call dreams actually is another realm. And we are going to symbol this realm as Universe B, as hell, as Tartarus, as the Klepoth, you see, and all the different beings, or all the different life forms, and all the different aspects of consciousness, all the different uncreated spirits, and all the different uncreated light that is in that darkness. That is what we all call, once again, demons, creatures, and all this different stuff, you know what I'm saying, that most people are afraid of, and that you see show up in horror movies. So for example, like in Hellraiser, whenever they played with that box represents, piercing the veil and unleashing some kind of doorway to Universe B, some kind of doorway to the Klepoth, some kind of doorway to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or some kind of doorway to the subconscious mind. But it's via control, okay? So this is the only way you're really gonna be able to do that. I've had plenty of examples, I've had plenty of experiences to where I was actually awake in a dream. I can remember probably 4 dreams to where, it was almost like, how if you outside around just maybe 2 p.m. and it's just a regular sunny day, but how your eyes, you can physically feel the heat of the sun, and you can physically feel and that you are awake. It was just like that. I had a dream, long story short, it was kind of weird, but I was like in a school, and I wasn't in school, I was just in there, and I remember walking down some steps on the outside of the school, and I can just remember how the weather was, And then I remember having another dream, long story short, where something was going down and I was about to leave. And in the dream, I knew what day it was. It was a Sunday, and also the weather. And I also knew what time it was. It looked like it may have been around 7 to 8 p.m. Because the sun clearly, you got from dusk till dawn. So the sun actually was going into, the dusk, basically, and it was getting darker. And once again, I could feel it and see it in the dream. I've even had dreams to where I urinated on myself. I've had that like twice. I was so deep into a dream to where I actually had to urinate on myself. It goes that deep. Okay. It happened 2 times. One time, the first time it happened because I didn't know how to fully control. I didn't know if I was awake or not. You see, that was what the problem was the first time. The first time I urinated on myself in the dream, it was because I still was trying to magically control all this. So I couldn't tell the difference. I didn't know if I was really awake or if I was in a dream or not. So I guess me urinating on myself was like a subconscious, thing that activated to kind of wake me up or to, to give my state of reasoning, am I awake or am I asleep? Because I kept asking myself, like, am I really awake, or am I, am I asleep? And I didn't know on the first go, and I literally urinated on myself. And I did it to where, in the dream when I was asking myself this, because once again, in the dream, everything was looking normal. The weather was out. I could feel the weather, the sun and all that. So I didn't know if that shit really was, I didn't know if it was real or not. So I kind of was asking my subconscious mind in the dream, am I awake or am I asleep? So I guess the subconscious mind to say, well, I'll show you. And then I started to urinate on myself. And right when I started, I woke up and I ran right to the bathroom because I knew what the fuck I was doing. And I was like, wow, I was talking to myself in the dream, but then I woke up as, I guess, my body and then went to the bathroom, but I knew what was going on. That was the first time. And the second time I urinated on myself, I was just so deep in the dream to where, I woke up and I had just peed on myself, So usually when this happens, I'm already going into the subconscious mind for something, you see, because I've gotten to a point, where my higher self knows that I'm pretty genuine about this. I've exposed myself on so many layers to even the internet and people. I tell you all this stuff. So, usually when you're keeping it real like that, your higher self will allow you to go beyond the doorway of a mentor. And you will go real, real deeper into your subconscious. And you will start to experience that other world, a mentor, that our Aboriginal Egyptian ancestors talked about. You see, and they say Osiris ruled the realms of Amenta. Okay. All right, let's check this out. The assumption of monstrous forms and the sense of identity with hellish astral entities becomes logical as a method of controlling Chthonian levels. Interesting. Chthonian. And Austin Spare has evolved valid techniques of sigillography for exploring these subliminal levels. This is very, very important. Sigillography. Okay. Sigils basically are occult subconscious telephones. A sigil is nothing but a subconscious telephone. It's a symbol that can actually communicate with your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is going to basically organize that sigil, and it's going to send it to your conscious mind to actually show you what it really means. So you may see a sigil and it just looks like a bunch of squiggly words inside of or squiggly lines inside of a circle. But your subconscious mind is going to take that symbol. It's going to basically take what you do know and what you do not know about that symbol. And then it's going to give your conscious mind a message. So it's going to say, this symbol represents, let's say, the winter solstice. Then your conscious mind will say, oh, this represents the winter solstice. So now when you see that occult symbol, your subconscious mind has now given your conscious mind what that means. So in other words, Heru went within the darkness to transform something for you. So when we use these words like magic and stuff, this is what we talk about. And then it goes into saying, here we are concerned with a more general statement and with the more psychographic and astrographic representations of the forces elementals evolved. So this is what we really dealing with. We dealing with psychographic and astrographic representations of these spiritual forces. Let me repeat. We're dealing with psychographic and astrographic representations of these spiritual forces, or these elementals, or these Neteru, or these ancestors, or whatever it is you want to call it, you know. But these are coming more through your psychology and coming more through the physical astrology or the physical astronomy of the planet. So that's why I keep hounding on, you know, understanding these astrological symbols and understanding what each planet means, you know, all the different elements that are associated with it, you know, what part of the body does it probably associate itself with, you know, and all these different things. And just understand the different symbols of it, because that's what the Aten or the Ain Sof is. You know, you have the nothingness, but once it creates itself and it casts off a light, once it casts off Heru, you got to remember, Heru has multiple infinite dimensions of himself. That's why you have so many different hero figures and all the different, you know, mythologies of the world. You know, once again, like I said, Quetzalcoatl is the hero figure for so-called Central America. You know, Heru would be the hero character for what we call really North America, what we call Upper Egypt. But really it would be Lower Egypt, because it started in the South. So North America really would be Lower Egypt, and Central and South America actually would be Upper Egypt. But that's who Heru is. You know, you have Hercules or Heracles. He is the hero figure, you know, of the so-called Greek, you know, mystery system or whatever. So you have all these different hero figures, or all these different angles, or all these different attributes of the Ain Sof, the Christ light that it cast off from the darkness, you see. So hopefully you start to understand a little bit, you know, more of what we're saying. And a lot of this stuff, you know, is dealing with sexuality, and it is dealing with the subconscious mind. So the point is this is what your ancestors wanted you to know. If you can stay awake during dreams, and if you can stay awake during sexual intercourse, you will be giving access to your own subconscious mind and to the collective subconscious mind of all of us. That is what the ancestors wanted you to know. If you can stay conscious and awake during dreams, and if you can stay conscious and awake during sexuality and sexual intercourses. Now, when I say staying awake during intercourse, what I mean is you're not allowing the animal ego to take over. You're not allowing just your physical body's impulses to take over. So if you're doing certain spiritual work and you but at the same time you just worried about getting some pussy and getting a nut, then you're not going anywhere. You're not going to no subconscious nothing, buddy. You see what I'm saying? So that's how all those sciences work. But what I just went into, though, is this is real Amaru Aboriginal American science, you see, on a more occult level. Okay. So I just went into some American science, okay, dealing with the serpent. And we are the serpent people. So Moors are the serpent people, you know, Aboriginal, Autochthonous Americans, serpents. All right. It's the boy Blackbeard. Stay tuned. I'm out.